I might go in and edit that out a bit. Hold on, I might just go back and restart because now I've thrown myself off mentally.
Woo! Okay, cool. I'm ready.
Hey there, Film Buds. Welcome back to the Film Buds podcast. I'm your host, Paul, and I'm joined, currently pretty usually, by my wife, Lauren.
Hi.
So, how are you, dear?
I'm good. I guess, I don't know, I'm a little... Let's do this now.
Yeah,
you know,
that's fair.
But I'm good.
No, that's fair. I'm honestly a little bit tired. The early morning is kind of coming around on me, but that's all right. So for those of you who don't know, today Lauren and I are going to be talking about two series. Both of them deal with 9/11, both in different ways. One is a documentary, one is a fictionalized account based on a real book. The first one is Turning Point, and the second one is The Looming Tower. We decided to kind of, do this episode a little while ago, but we ended up not finishing Turning Point or The Looming Tower in time, honestly. Things just sort of got in the way. And it's pretty heavy subject matter. We finished watching Looming Tower actually just this morning. But we wanted to do it because it's something that, is a historical event of interest for me on a certain level, and also because, it did turn 20 this year. The event, it happened 20 years ago. And I'm always curious about how things are portrayed in film and television and things like that, especially with hindsight. And everyone has an opinion that they're trying to portray, even in a documentary or a TV show. And so I thought that would be interesting to go and look at two very recent releases. Looming Tower is from 2018, and Turning Point came out this year. And I don't know, I thought that it would be interesting to go and look at it, to sort of put any listeners' minds at ease. We're not going to necessarily get too far into the politics, particularly, of anything. But I'll just say, the one thing that I think is a universal opinion is that both sides, across multiple administrations, made a lot of very, very bad decisions. And that's all that I'll really say about the actual politics of anything regarding it. But I think that we're going to try and keep it, pretty civil, pretty focused on the content itself and how it's talking about these things and what it wants you to feel and think about these things. Because we're not using this for some sort of platform per se, not like this, especially not on something that I'm nowhere near informed enough to possibly have a proper, use of this platform for. So
Yeah, I feel like I need to really look at the facts written down more, and like this was great for like a visual kind of understanding of the events of 9/11, but I feel like personally I still need to go and really just kind of digest everything that happened and like reevaluate some of the facts, just for myself, and not necessarily I guess reevaluate, but like, just cement what these things are for myself, so that way that I can like, have a better understanding of what truly, happened.
Mm-hmm. Not in any sort of, conspiratorial way, but just in the sense of like understanding the who, the why, the when in actual detail, like reading the actual Looming Tower book.
No, yeah, because like I think that it's really important to have an understanding of history as history, no sugarcoating, no, I don't know. I want to hear the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to just hear one side of it. I don't want to hear the victor's version of history. I want to hear the facts as they were, as they happened. you
So
know.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's all that I have to really get us started. We might talk about some other stuff afterward. I guess it kind of depends on how we feel a little bit at the
Yeah.
end. But we do have, of course, a clip for you. We're going to go ahead and start with Turning Point, and we've got a clip, so take a quick listen.
It was a beautiful fall morning. There was the loudest noise I had ever heard, and it got dark.
Pieces of this story continue to come together. I've never seen anything like this.
I whispered into the president's ear, America is under attack.
I am convinced military action will not prevent acts of terrorism.
Oh, we know where they're shooting from! Keep moving! Keep moving!
So that was Turning Point, 9/11 and the War on Terror, which, as I said, came out this year, 2021. And it is directed by Brian Knappenberger, and the premise is this unflinching series documents the 9/11 terrorist attacks from Al-Qaeda's roots in the 80s to America's forceful response, both at home and abroad. So do you want me to start, or do you want to start? Or...
Sure, you can start.
Okay. I didn't think that you were going to want to start.
No.
But I thought that I would ask. So I saw this one, and I was sort of instantly drawn to it. You know, once I saw it, I was like, oh, I do want to watch that. Because it is something that has, you know, been a part of the aftermath of 9/11, you know, the war in Afghanistan and all of that has been a part of our life for, 20 years now. And so I thought it was interesting to go back and revisit the roots, just for myself personally. Because again, I know some of the broad strokes of certain things, but I didn't know certain key details, certain key figures, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I was immediately sort of drawn in to the concept, and I immediately wanted to watch the series. And ultimately, what I'll say, just sort of upfront, is that I'm glad that I did, but that first episode is definitely like
it's hard.
It's an incredibly rough experience, because the first episode you start with sort of the events of
they
the day
ripped
of
that
9/11.
Band-Aid right on off. They're like, here's the day. Here it is, right there.
Yeah, and so even though it sort of chronologically documents things, pretty much every episode for the first 3 or so starts with some sort of accounting of certain perspectives on the day of.
Yeah.
Because it's like the third episode, I think, that you have the perspective from the Pentagon.
Yeah.
So overall, I found it very effective, and I'm glad that I watched it, but it was also a very difficult watch. And that's, I think, how I'll start it. Dear, how did you feel?
Whew, boy howdy. Yeah, I would second that opinion. It was tough. And I mean, I think that once we got past the events, the day of events, and like started to like really go through the history of 9/11 and the things that came before and how we got to today, it was really informative. And I think that at the end of the day, I'm glad that I watched it. But I don't know if I would have watched this one on my own.
Okay, that's fair. Now, overall, I would say that I think the documentary for me does a really good job. It chronicles, like it says, the sort of full scope of the events, which is also actually what the Looming Tower book itself kind of chronicles. This is sort of taking a page, pun intended, from the book. And it's going through and it's trying to chronicle that full story, that full scope. And I think for the most part, it's pretty effective at doing a lot of the similar ground that is treaded by the Looming Tower on a certain level. Where I think that for me the documentary did start to probably taper off and get a little bit on the weaker side was probably more once we hit modernity a little bit more so. Sort of once we got into the Obama years, I felt like we really moved through the Obama years.
Yeah.
And the Trump years and that sort of thing up to now pretty quickly, because the whole series is 5 hours, 12 minutes long, broken up into 5 episodes. And so for me, I felt like I maybe needed another episode in there.
No, I'd say that that's fair, because I felt like they took a lot of care with earlier episodes, and it did kind of feel like and then we ended it. You know, we kind of just like skipped over a lot of key details that I guess they didn't think were very necessary, but I feel like at the end of the day, since the war just ended, I don't know, quotes, I don't know. I think that it's weird that they kind of were just like, these presidencies happened during this time, but like, I guess had no opinion about it. I don't know the politics of it, and I don't really care to know. But I just think that that's I agree with you saying that it's weird that they just kind of like skipped over those two very, very big jumps.
I feel like the general opinion from my perspective of the episodes that did deal with the Obama administration, the opinion is that they were collectively in that office a little overly optimistic and ultimately a little unrealistic on what some of the goals that they were aiming for, with also how they were hoping to achieve them. And then also ended up just wandering into the general opinion for me kind of is that like everyone ended up making the same blunder, which is no one had a plan. And I feel like they just sort of use that as a short way to move through the Obama and the Trump administration. It could also be an issue, I guess, of access to people and information who, you know, because I will say that they get like 2 people from the Bush administration to come in and go on record. So they get incredible. That's a real strength of this documentary as well, is that it does have really, really strong primary sources as interview subjects.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear from people who were working in politics at that time, to hearing from survivors and loved ones of those who lost their lives that day. And it was just I think that it was just really, really beautifully done. It's just, you know, it's a hard topic, and I think that that's something that will probably push people away from watching it. But like, if you are one of those people who want to know, I would consider this a great resource.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, you know, and I certainly don't want to necessarily get political, but it's interesting to hear what both of the people from the Bush administration say, because, you know, there are certain ways that they are from, I think, even as if I were an interviewer, there are ways that I would have found their answers to my questions a little bit unsatisfactory on a certain level. And so, but it is interesting as a viewer to then sit and have all the story playing out and kind of weigh what's being said to also what else is being said, what else is being shown, what else is being documented, and to kind of weigh their perspective against it actively is interesting, and I do recommend the series quite a bit. Do you watch a lot of, like, more, I guess, historic... I know that you watch a lot of, like, animal documentaries. This is a documentary-focused question. I know that you watch a lot of animal docs. Do you typically go out of your way to watch things about, like, historical events or atrocities or things like that?
I guess that's not really, like, my morbid curiosity. I think that I found the Ted Bundy documentary on Netflix fascinating, and I would highly recommend that as well. But that's kind of like where my curiosities usually go towards when it comes to like historical events. It's usually like, you know, the oddities of the human psyche that I kind of like. I think that that's probably because like I definitely grew up in a household that like, you know, watched Criminal Minds and like CSI, and I just kind of I love a good mystery, and I think that those are always like, you know, the biggest mysteries of all are the, you know, the spooks in the night.
No, I definitely get that. I'm drawn toward them occasionally, intermittently, you know. I really enjoy like I think it's Dirty Money on Netflix, which is a great docuseries. It's an anthology docuseries. So I can certainly be drawn toward it just because I'm fascinated by, I guess, I think that there's a spectrum, you know, there is sort of, you know, a known spectrum of sort of, you know, sociopathy. Not saying that anyone involved in, like, you know, the 9/11 thing is a sociopath, but I mean, some people were, obviously. But I'm fascinated in a lot of events that have criminality at a high level that is sort of, I guess, you know, just as damaging as, you know, like a Ted Bundy, but in a totally different way.
Kind of like the mob.
Yeah, but is ultimately just as much a symptom of a similar sort of mindset, this sort of predatory mindset, and I'm fascinated by that on a certain level. So I'm drawn to a lot of, I guess, things like the 9/11 documentary, like Wormwood.
Oh, Wormwood is nuts.
And so I'm definitely drawn toward things like that on a certain level, I would say.
I mean, I guess it also just really depends on the subject matter for me, and
this was not one that you would normally go to yourself.
oh no, and like I knew like with the 20th anniversary now passed, but like with it lingering in the air, it was something that I knew that I needed to rip off a little bit, you know, not be afraid of this event anymore. And so I'm glad that we did it, but also like I'm glad that it's done.
Yeah. Yeah, one actual way that I thought that it definitely, I thought, glanced over some of the aftermath, and maybe this is just something that is more of what I found personally interesting that, you know, I can't critique them for not including. I was a little surprised that they didn't show any of the sort of uphill battle that has taken place for first responders afterward to get adequate health care and compensation, sort of, you know, for how much this has taken a toll on them, which is a big cause of actually Jon Stewart.
I mean, I feel like that's a whole, like, other documentary.
But I feel like that itself could have been a whole episode. And maybe that's my thing, is, like, you know, The Looming Tower was 10 episodes. This was 5. I could have gone for probably, maybe not 10 of this show, but probably closer to, like, 6 or 7.
Yeah, because, I mean, I guess eventually you would have to stop talking about, you know, direct 2-day of events and really, start to move past that and, like, the effects of what happened to, I guess, not only the people of New York, but also, like, the city itself, you know. It took them forever to do the monument and stuff like that. You know, we could have talked about erecting this whole thing and how long that took, and the history behind the decision and all of that jazz.
I was very interested in how they brought, and I wasn't expecting them to take it here, you know, and this was definitely a way that they surprised me in a sort of a good way, when they brought up the discussion on the Islamic Cultural Center that ended up not getting built. And I remember when that was getting talked about and how it was getting branded as a mosque by a lot of people, unfortunate, you know, as like a negative thing.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate what happened, and I love that they end with his words, because I think that he has a very profound final message of peace that definitely is very it resonates.
Yeah, you know, and I think that both of these shows had a real like hindsight 2020 kind of mindset behind them, because I think they were taken with more care than if they had come out right after the events, because there was a lot of hate.
I think it's definitely the right time. I do think that 20 years is a good time to start to investigate, and we can talk about that a little bit more also after Looming Tower, discussing sort of fictionalized versions of history around this event. But as far as this documentary was concerned, I thought that it handled what was very difficult subject matter, for the most part, very tactfully. I think that it definitely wants you to know that if there's one thing I think that it wants you to know, it's that a war with no end in sight is a futile effort that only begets more war. And that, at the end of the day, peace is always still an option. It's a tough option, but it's always an option. And I would say that that's probably the overall filmmaker's objective.
No, yeah. I thought that it was cleansing, I guess, is a good way to put it. And I think that this is, for me, a step in the right direction. I have definitely been avoiding, like, the plague this one day in history. But like I think that it is time for us as a nation to shed this skin and move forward towards peace.
What would you give the documentary overall?
Oh God, I thought that this thing was super effective. I was crying left, right, and center. I think that they did a great job. The emotional payoff is tremendous from this thing. So I'd say I'd give it like a 4.5 out of 5.
Okay, I'm gonna go with a 4.
Okay.
I did feel like those last few parts were just a little bit rushed. And there are definitely some places that I feel like they could have gone and didn't go that hampered the story a little.
And like maybe that's just because you know how politics are. It takes time for all this information to come out. So maybe they just didn't have the access to it.
No,
Who
for
knows?
Sure. But overall, I definitely think that it was very good, and I would recommend it.
Yeah.
Moving on, we now have a fictional series, The Looming Tower, and we have a clip, so take a listen.
This isn't a war about one man. His people actually believe.
You are making a mistake, sir. Someday this administration will be remembered for the risks it didn't take.
What I need you for is to figure out what happens next, so we can stop it.
So that was The Looming Tower, which is a Hulu series based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning story by Lawrence Wright, also called The Looming Tower. And the premise is a look at how the rivalry between the CIA and FBI inadvertently set the stage for the tragedy of 9/11 and the war in Afghanistan.
Wow, that was a full sentence.
Yeah. So, the show stars Jeff Daniels, Tahir Rahim, Ren Schmidt, Bill Camp, Louis Cancelemi, Virginia Cull, sorry about that last name, my guy, Michael Stuhlbarg, and Peter Sarsgaard, with a few brief appearances by Alec Baldwin as well. Do you want to start this one?
Sure. So I think watching these shows kind of simultaneously, almost like very close together, was very helpful because we got like the very, these are the facts in the Looming Tower, and this one was definitely the dramatized version and simplified in some places. I know that some people were not exactly who the actual person was in real life, but got to get the story told somehow.
Yeah, they make a few composites and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I thought that it was very effective, and this show literally takes the exact opposite approach with the day of. It does not start with it, and I think that it is really interesting to see the events that kind of led up in again this very dramatized version of history way to what happened, because like I've never really known.
Yeah.
And I think that this was a very nice digestible kind of easy way to get this information without necessarily having to go to the textbook version, which I would say that the Looming Tower was. I mean the
Turning Point.
Ah, God, these names.
Yeah. So I think that it was great. I really enjoyed watching it in conjunction with the documentary as well. It was kind of how I felt about when I did OJ, The People versus OJ. I went and I watched all of the documentary, and then I went and watched all of the FX show. By the way, The Looming Tower is on Hulu. I forgot to mention that. And Turning Point is on Netflix. I really enjoyed this a lot. It was interesting seeing a real-life person from Turning Point, Ali Soufan, as a character in
like he's like the main
Looming
character.
Tower. Yeah, he's pretty much he's our actual main protag. So I really, really enjoyed it. This one, whereas Turning Point, I think, was laying the blame kind of a lot of places. This story is definitely, it's about feud and rivalry, and kind of how Hamilton, the musical, takes the real life feud that did exist between Burr and Hamilton and use it for these overarching themes and metaphors and ideas. I think the Looming Tower reaches for that as well. I'm not sure it always lands each one of those blows as effectively as I would like it to, but I do think that it swings pretty well for the most part. I was really pleased with a lot of the performances. Jeff Daniels does a great job. Bill Camp does a great job. Tahir Rahim does a great job. Michael Stolbarg does great. Like, honestly, no one does a bad job cast-wise. The issue for me is truly in the writing and in some of the ways that they do shortcut and I think shortchange the narrative. And I if I had to give the show truly one note, it's that, the FBI are clearly meant to be our good guys. The Al-Qaeda cell is meant to be our bad guys, but are bad guys that are partially the result of bad action before, and some of them are out and out evil who are manipulators, but some of them are confused people who have been manipulated, and they paint them with a much broader brush. And then the true antagonists, the true bad guys of the show, are the CIA, and I think that they paint them with an almost cartoonishly evil brush, and I think that does sometimes hinder some of those characters' arguments.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't know if these people were really like this in real life, but I mean, I really hope not, because honestly, how did you get so high up in your career, mate? Like, some of these people, like, are just portrayed as the worst evil people who ever existed. And, like, I mean, I don't know if that's real or not. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that I would not want to work for you, and I think that this is the problem, guys.
But no, I think that overall it's the weakest point, because they take a real life guy who was the head of the CIA task force, and he's a composite character here. They fictionalize him, and they definitely hint at his sort of future as a guy who would end up going on to, you know, write this book about bin Laden and do all of these other things that the show knows that he goes on to do. They put all of that in there, and maybe it was all in there, you know, at the time, but they definitely, I feel like they ham it up to really make him seem like a bit of a madman.
No, yeah, they really kind of make him kind of like, what's his name, like Charles Manson or something s, like, they really portray this guy as like a kind of sociopathic cult leader dude who's just like manipulating the CIA and all of their agents to not share intel, and bada bing bada boom. That's how things happened, and we gosh darn could have fixed it if you only shared some intel. But you know, stinginess is bad.
Yeah. But yeah, so overall, I definitely thought that element could be improved. They go out of their way to definitely make sure that pretty much everyone in the FBI is favorably viewed. And not to say that anyone in the FBI was like a bad person, but like I'm not sure that they get the same. They don't ever get, I think, any kind of real mark against them to the same way that like they really lay every drop of this at the CIA's feet.
Yeah, I mean, like, and they're like really trying to make some, like, you know, our main guy has like affairs like left, right, and center, and they are just like painting him as just like this confused man. And like, yeah, I get that, like that could have been his reality, sure, but also like I don't think that the CIA got painted as nicely as this man, that they're just like, you know, being like, oh gosh, he's just a tortured soul, whereas like they are all evil twirling mustachers over there. Gosh darn them. You know, burn them all in hell. I don't know.
I think that this could have used, honestly, the documentary treatment. It's based on a Pulitzer Prize-winning book that covers a very, very expansive period of time. And when I was watching it, I oftentimes felt like Turning Point was, you know, a similar story to Looming Tower, and I was like, I don't understand why Looming Tower didn't end up a documentary, and it ended up a dramatized show.
I don't know, maybe for the digestibility of it.
Yeah,
you know?
Perhaps.
It's a lot of information, and like that's what I really learned about all of this with watching both of them, is just like there's so much that I still don't truly fully comprehend of what happened on that day, you know. And the time leading up towards it.
No, absolutely. I think maybe Looming Tower could have almost done something similar to Wormwood, where it has all of this documentary footage, but then it has all of this very, very high-end recreation footage. And hybridize the two, and I think that could have been really successful
like,
as a format
splice them
for
together, because then we could have, you know, had Ali Soufan on, you know, on the dramatized version of it, and then we could have had him being interviewed still, and it would have, you know, coincided more, I think, directly.
Yeah. And I think that would have worked really well. Because
the Looming Tower did have some of the footage of, like, events and you know, things that happened.
Spliced in some real footage.
Yeah, but I think that they could have gone a little bit, you know, I think that overlapping them more would have made a nicer show.
No, I think that I absolutely agree with that. Have not seen Zero Dark 30?
Can you remind me of what Zero Dark 30 is?
That's the one that's about the bin Laden hunt.
No. No, I have not seen that one. Is that one Catherine Bigelow? Is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that one. I think the Looming Tower. I don't know. I think that it sometimes. It just doesn't sometimes, I think, hit as squarely as I would like it to, and I think that, like, if we watch Zero Dark 30, you'll see what I mean. I feel like it does a better job of hitting its theme on the head without sometimes being quite so heavy-handed. I think a really great instance of like where you definitely see the artistic license of the Looming Tower for me is in the congressional hearing footage, where in real life it was in one of the like I think probably windowless rooms of the Capitol, and it has like, you know, all of the fluorescent lights of a government building, and it looks like, you know, every time you see C-SPAN footage of a congressional vote or a hearing, it looks like that. Whereas in the Looming Tower, the show, it's suddenly this very blue tint, you know, mood, atmosphere, lighting, and like it's not at all the congressional chamber, and that was also probably potentially, you know, a budgetary thing. You know, we can't put it in the congressional chamber, but they go out of their way to evoke a very different tone and mood than the reality of the events. And honestly, so you definitely feel the artistic license, I think, a little bit heavier than I would like, maybe.
Well, yeah,
and that's the
thing. there were times that it kind of us like flipping from like the White House, like an obvious White House, to like then now we're on a set. There were times where I was like, that's not the White House. I don't know where y'all are. But look at these nondescript hallways that you're walking through. I found that very distracting. But other than that, you know.
No, absolutely.
No, but you talking about the congressional thing made me think of them just being like in nondescript Capitol rooms.
No, absolutely. Just
like
some hallways. Yeah.
DC place.
DC place number 2. No, I think that's all fair. But for the most part, I honestly did quite enjoy it, and I think that it's definitely worth a watch. I don't think, and this is something I was going to mention, everything uses obviously like the real life footage of the attack. And I think that it's good that we're finally at this place where we are doing stories about it and documentaries and fictionalization, because, you know, it's always good to tell stories and tell people stories. And
yeah.
What I don't think that we are at yet is the point of going to a team of animators and be like, okay, it's time for you guys to animate the plane hitting the tower.
What?
We're not at the point of anyone ever doing any kind of dramatization of like the impact itself. I think that for the next many years we're going to get...
I'm not watching that movie. I had a hard time with the movie that came out like with what's his name? Nick Cage?
Yeah, the World Trade Center.
Yeah, like I had to tap out of that movie. And I literally won't watch that. I'm sorry. If anyone makes it, Lauren's not watching it.
You know, I think that you're gonna have a hard time with your animators. You know, like I think you're gonna have to. It's gonna be a hard sell to tell your animators that they now have to sit down and watch like hours of real life 9/11 footage to then go and digitally recreate 9/11.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so I don't think that that's going to happen anytime in the near future, even by half.
You spoke it into existence. Now somebody's writing it down right now. They're writing down the worst idea right now.
A great example of another movie that came out that was much sooner that some people I think thought was too soon. You know, some people thought the World Trade Center movie was too soon. You mentioned that movie.
Oh.
Another movie that some people thought was a little bit too soon was the United 93 movie by Paul Greengrass, which came out in, let me see when United 93 came out. 2006, so 5 years later. And it's a really good movie. It's a tough movie as well, but it's a really good movie. Very, very hard, and I understand why some people felt like it was too soon, but he is very respectful, I think, with it.
Well, I think that's the best way to do this, honestly, is to respect the day, respect the source material, respect the people, you know, and do the best that you can. Because I don't know. I think that this thing is gonna be around for a while, and I think that it's good to remember, but also like I really don't want to watch some like cartoon version of it. I don't.
Yeah.
You know? I think that in itself is distasteful.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. What would you give Looming Tower overall?
I think that I'd give Looming Tower a 4.
Okay, I'll give it a 4, but it's light.
Okay.
If it weren't for Jeff Daniels and Tahir Rahim being so charming, I'm not sure that it would have crossed all the way into a 4 for me.
No, yeah. I think that they did a really good job, though, with understanding, and this was something that, like, right after 9/11 was really offensive, that we just, like, we made everybody who even remotely looked like they possibly practiced any Islamic, followings, teachings, that we've just made everybody into a terrorist. And I think that was something that this didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really happy about that, because I was like, it's been enough. We've had enough of it.
Yeah. For sure.
And I think that this is something that took the time and the care to understand that that's not the correct way that we should have been looking at this, and past decisions were made and mistakes happened, but we shouldn't keep perpetuating those stereotypes, and move forward and be better.
No, I think that's all very fair. So yeah, that was sort of our overview of it. It was definitely hard. I definitely recommend it. But I also, of course, always recommend you going and looking for good information from good verified sources, and learning history, and making sure that you learn, the correct history. I know that sounds weird, but in this age of misinformation, there are such things as incorrect histories and accountings of events. And
no, yeah, for sure.
And I'm not talking about things that are skewed with a bias. I'm talking about things that are openly divorced from reality. And so, bias is one thing. Actively perpetuating any sort of false narrative for any sort of historical event is harmful.
Yeah.
And so it's good to go out and expose yourself to history and different perspectives on history, and really try and learn what you can from people who know what they're talking about with these things.
Yeah, with not only your history or your nation's history, but go and experience somebody else's history, because it can be really enlightening to connect the dots of history, because everybody has experienced the same amount of time, So, like, let's fill in the gaps of what everybody was doing in all points of time. It wasn't just, it wasn't just one time in history where America was just doing things and nobody else was,
Yeah. So, yeah. I hope that you enjoyed the episode. I hope that you go and if you are up to seeking it out, I hope that you find as much value from it as we did. Dear, would you like to do anything more, or do you think that that's about all that our listeners have the...
Honestly, if they've made it this far, I think that we should set them free.
All right. Well, then we can go ahead and call it a day, folks. We'll do some more usual stuff and what we've been watching and things like that next week. Next week actually starts the Halloween season.
Woo!
Next Friday is October 1st. And I'm quite pumped. We're going to do a whole Halloween episode, or series of episodes.
Yeah.
It's going to be a whole Halloween themed month.
I'm excited.
We have Lauren's Picks, which is actually one movie that's two movies. It's Death Proof. Grindhouse, excuse me. The Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez combination film with Death Proof and Planet Terror. And then after that, we're going to do both of the Dawn of the Dead films, the original and the remake. Mm-hmm. And I'll be joined by Sky Tilley on that one, which will be a great time. Sky's a good guy. We've got Hispanic heritage in horror films with Kronos and Tigers Are Not Afraid. And we also have silent film that's horror films with Nosferatu and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. So the month is going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, so I know that this episode was a little bit of a downer, but next week is going to be back to more upbeat, more fun things. Also, sometime in October, we'll probably hear from Henry, so we'll have some sort of update to give y'all in October. Maybe he'll have some sort of update to give y'all. Currently, I don't know. I haven't heard from him. That happens at basic training, so...
I mean, you'll have to keep listening to find out whether or not, he comes on.
Yeah. So, as always, keep watching things. Keep sending us your questions, your recommendations. We're thinking about making November International Cinema Month. Mm-hmm. So if you're one of our international listeners in India, I believe we have some in Kuwait, go and send us some recommendations, and we'll go and we'll talk about international cinema all throughout the month of November, potentially. So go email us at thefilmbudspodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at thefilmbuds. Follow us on Instagram at thefilmbudspodcast. We even have a LinkedIn page, people. You can find us everywhere. So, and if none of that does it for you, then there's always thefilmbuds.com as well. So you've got a lot of ways. If you're here and a long-time listener, you already know. If you're a new listener, go and get on it. Drop us a review. Have a great day, folks, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.